so that you can ask questions throughout the session, and inshallah we'll be working to answer those questions as we go, inshallah. So I'm excited to introduce our panelists for this evening. We have Sister Amanda Walter, who has 6 children, ages 2 years to 12 years. She prefers to follow the child's lead and not one curriculum. She has a bachelor's in education with a minor in child development and has taught for more than 15 years. Amanda runs a small business and also works as an independent contractor for an au-pair agency. And also we have Sister Kotha Moteli, who has a master's in elementary education. She's taught elementary and high school levels in public and private schools. She began homeschooling 5 years ago. Her 19-year-old son is earning his associate's degree this fall, and her 17-year-old daughter would join him at NVCC for her freshman year. She's still homeschooling her high school age daughter, and in addition to that, she is active with Girl Scouts and as a soccer coach, and she also teaches classes. Last year, she launched a homeschool consulting company. Thank you, ladies, for joining us.
No problem.
The curriculum feels like such a big deal. Just to get us started tonight, what advice do you have for parents who are feeling anxiety about making this decision?
Kawthar, go ahead.
I guess I want to start by saying that it'll be okay. Whatever curriculum that you choose, you won't be married to for the entire year. I am somebody who didn't start out homeschooling my kids when they were very young. I actually transitioned into it when they were in middle and upper elementary schools. And I've been told and have lived through the experience that when you first start homeschooling, you kind of throw everything at it to see what sticks. And I definitely did that. I jumped in with both feet and chose a lot of things, definitely, started out very highly scheduled, very regimented, as so many new homeschoolers do. And then came to relax. We found a rhythm in our family that worked for us. We were able to, find what curricula fit for each child, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. And I've also had the benefit of being a teacher before and knowing that my kids really enjoyed, the physical touch and feel and visuals of textbook learning. And so what I did for myself was we just chose textbooks, and I created pacing guides for my kids. And so they knew over a 38-week school year what they would be doing in each book every day. And then we just supplemented from there with, in-person classes, going through the Smithsonian and, taking enrichment courses. Nothing was really virtual, and until recently, of course. And so, you'll put it together and it'll be okay. You're going to change your mind. Things will change over the course of the school year, and things will change for each child.
Yeah, definitely. No, definitely. Okay, so when I first started about 7-8 years ago, okay, I was super, super, super nervous. Although, I have an education background and all of that. So I kind of knew that my kid, the first one, right, was super into reading. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do literature based. I went ahead and bought the whole year out. Okay. Interestingly enough, I think we did about 3 months of it. And I realized, you know what, I really don't need to just stick to this. We can kind of run with his interests, and I had another baby too at that time. So it was like, okay, so we're going to balance this, and we're going to get outside. We're going to do a lot of visits outside and running around. I like to be out doing at that time in my life. So it kind of turned into this unschooling approach, and that curriculum just kind of sat on the shelf. And I just want to throw that out there to let you know that, yeah, there's a curriculum. Yeah, there's lots of options out there, but especially for those little guys from K through 2nd grade, have fun. Have fun. Don't let those years go by thinking you're stressing about, what level are they reading? What are they good enough in math? I mean, I feel like if you set those first few years and you have a great relationship with the kids and you're having fun with it, you're going to show them that learning is really so much fun. It's not just about sitting down and following that curriculum. Just wanted to add that too.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies. Actually, I was listening to a talk today where Sir Ken Robinson said that most people feel that college starts at kindergarten, and he was no, kindergarten starts at kindergarten. So it is important to enjoy that the child's development where they are. But and seems like you both really take into consideration the developmental needs and age of the child. But what else do you take into account when thinking about what curriculum you'll be using or what curriculum resources you'll be using?
You want to start again, Catherine?
Okay, so there are a bunch of different factors that you have to take into consideration when you're planning for selecting curriculum. The first is the child themselves. Okay, what age is that child? So where are they developmentally? What are the learning benchmarks that they should be achieving at that age? What are the different abilities of that child? How do they learn best? You know, if you look at the different learning styles, are they auditory learners, musical learners? Are they kinesthetic, which means hands-on learners? You want to look at the different ways that that child learns, and each child in your family and in your household is going to be different. So when you're choosing a curriculum, you want to choose something that really, you know, plays to that child's needs, but also challenges them in the areas where they need to grow. You have to think about your goals, your long-term goals for that child, not just their immediate goals, but what sort of human being do you want to see at the other end of this long homeschool journey? Because, you know, from an Islamic perspective, we're looking at really enriching and nourishing and developing a whole human being, spiritually, intellectually, and personally. And so this has been, this resource that's being showed right here really helps to create a long-term plan and vision for not just what you want your child to learn, but also what you want your home and your household to be like. What kind of learning environment, what type of tarbiyah do you want to give your child in the long run? The next thing that you have to consider is yourself. As is being shown here, you want to think about your own educational philosophy, your strengths and weaknesses, and your personal learning styles. Are you a type A person? Are you a type B person? How organized can you be? If you choose a curriculum that's really like a pacing straitjacket, where you have to be doing certain things at certain times with each kid, and you've got maybe 3 or 4 or 5 at home, is that something that you can stick to? Are you regimented, or do you need things to be laid back? And then what your situation is. And honestly, part of what your situation is can mean, you know, how much money can you invest in curriculum versus just coming up with free learning experiences that are available out in the community.
Yeah, no, to add to that, I think it's really important that parents take a look and say, okay, I'm type A, for example, and my child is type B. How is that going to work? I've seen a lot of times where you see the type A parent butting heads with the type B child. When you're formulating that vision, you have to have an understanding, okay, I know my child is like this. I know their strengths and their weaknesses. And by now we've spent a lot of time, right, one-on-one and with the kids and things like that. We have a pretty good idea, you know, the type of child. We've been living with them for years, right? So you have to be realistic with yourself and, you know, lay it out. Okay, lay out the strengths and the weaknesses of yourself and the child. And don't set yourself up for failure saying, okay, I'm type A, so I like my schedule and I like things, and then we're going to switch. But then the child is like, chill, mom, you know, or chill, dad, this too much, you know. And the child will tell you. They shouldn't be crying about it. There shouldn't be a lot of dragging their feet. They should be enjoying what they're doing. And if they're not, then we got to reflect on that and see, okay, let's see what's going on. It's going to be a different conversation between the K-2 crowd, and then a different conversation between the elementary crowd, and then the high schoolers, as I'm sure, and the college kids, right? Heather, as you know, I mean, they're your partners. So you should be talking to them and seeing, you know, what's going wrong. Why isn't this engaging? Why are you so upset? Why are we fighting about this?
Right. And, you know, when it comes to transitioning into homeschooling, if it's something that you do later on, if you're pulling them out of upper elementary or middle school or even high school, and you're starting to homeschool them, there are a couple of things that you have to keep in mind. The first is that children who have been in formal education setting and transition into homeschooling are going to go through a process called deschooling. Deschooling is sort of like detoxing. And it's not to say that, formal education is a toxic environment. I'm a teacher, so I happen to, have also enjoyed my time in formal education. But it means that when all of those guardrails are taken off, when the schedule and the social environment and lunch break and recess and all of those things are taken away and they're suddenly at home, even if you do all this, even if you build in a bunch of extracurriculars and outside experiences, when those guardrails of formal education come off, kids have a really hard time, and adults have a really hard time figuring out how to navigate the new feelings, how to navigate their independence. It can be a little disconcerting. And the rule of thumb for the process of deschooling is that it takes about 1 month for every year of formal learning that child had. So you can imagine that when I started homeschooling my 9th grader, it took many months of, deer caught in headlights, or, all the cycles of grief and anger and frustration and lashing out and why am I doing this? And this is ridiculous. And I miss my friends, and I even craving things like grades and report cards. Like, I need to know where I stand. So you have to understand that there's going to be a transition period that takes place aside from choosing the difficulty of choosing curricula. And to Amanda's point earlier about personality types and A types and B types, if your child is old enough, if they are in middle school or high school, it might be nice for you as a family, even as parents and children, to take a Myers-Briggs personality test and to see where you are, because that can really help. If your child's an introvert, they may be intrapersonal learners where they like to do things independently. If they're an extrovert, you might need to build in opportunities for them to learn in small group setting, which I know can be difficult in a COVID world, right? If they are judging, then they need highly structured. But if they are perceiving types, then they are going to need things that are kind of a little bit more loosey-goosey. I found out we have 4 type A personalities in our family and 1 child who's a type B. And we really have to be cognizant and make, have mercy for her and make, decisions that will help her to find a good routine in our household. So those are some things that you might want to take into consideration in choosing curriculum and in thinking about how it's going to work, the whole homeschooling thing in your family.
I think those are such good points, and it seems like you guys are reiterating that point of just being really observant about your children, getting to know your children. That relationship is so key, which is something a public school teacher can't really do, but because you're there with your child and you know them best, it's such a great opportunity to really know, to really find a curriculum that meets their needs. So now that we kind of have an idea of where to start, how to approach things, how do we know what's out there? I think navigating the curriculum world can be kind of overwhelming. So what would you guys recommend?
Amanda?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the first thing I tell everyone is make sure that you're using Facebook to its best ability, right? When I first started, I joined all the groups, right? It didn't matter. It was like Christian, secular, homeschooling, the Muslim groups. There was a few at that time, just a couple though. Now there's a lot more. And I joined everyone. I wanted to see what everyone was saying. I also joined the teacher groups too, though. Like I had, at that time I had a 1st grader. So I joined the 1st grade teacher groups and found out, kind of what the 1st grade teachers were saying. And I just feel like we don't use that resource enough. And people are like, oh, I feel like they're lost. But if we do enough reading and we go through the groups, I know that takes time, right? But even if you spent like 15 minutes a day just kind of going through and seeing, okay, what is this person saying? Okay, even just type, okay, so I have 2 types of math curriculum in my head. I want to see what's the difference between Saxon and Singapore. There are a million groups on Saxon and there's a million groups on Singapore. You can kind of see what those parents are saying. And then you can go in the homeschooling groups, type in the search, please use a search. Oh my goodness, please use a search, right? Just type in Singapore, and you'll find thousands of posts saying opinions about Singapore. I mean, the the amount of information is out there. You don't even need to formulate a new question. Everybody already asked it. I mean, homeschooling has been on, been going on for ages. All the information is there. You just have to, get an idea. Okay, so whether, just start somewhere, right? And just get an idea. Okay, well, I think I have a hands-on learner. They really need, whatever you feel like key personality things, and just go for it. Get immersed in the Singapore land, immersed in the Saxon, immersed in math, mammoth, and just get in there and just kind of see what everybody's saying about it. That's my first word of advice. Just read. Facebook is a great resource for that.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with Amanda there. Start with some of the organizations that support homeschooling in your state. So if you are in the state of Virginia, HEAV, which is HEAV, the Home Educators Association of Virginia, is a really good one. There's also vahomeschoolers.org. If you are at the national level and are looking for information about homeschooling and even curriculum choices in your state that will meet your state benchmarks, the HSLDA, or Homeschool Legal Defense Association. I know it's a legal group, but they actually have a ton of resources on their website, and they have them state by state. Kathy Duffy's reviews. She does a lot of curriculum reviews and like top 20 lists or like top 10 lists. So if you go on her website, but the blogs have a ton of stuff. So if you are not on social media like me, if you're not on any social media, which is me, then blogs are going to be your best friends, or any of those homeschooling information sites. Those are really good too. In addition, I know that because I get asked this so often, I've started to compile a list, which I believe has been put in your folders. If you've joined this group, you will see a list of I would call it a starter list of what's out there. So if you want paper pencil curriculum, if you want a one box has everything, if you want to pick and choose, I've sort of compiled it into this document here. You can see there's the different homeschool approaches that people take. And sometimes it's nice if you're new to the homeschool world and you don't know what an unschooler is versus a school at homer. You're going to want to, look into that. If you don't know who Charlotte Mason is and why is she such a big deal in the homeschool world, you're going to want to look into that. If you don't know what classical education is, it's a classical Western education versus a classical Islamic education, and what is our philosophy as Muslims about how to educate a whole human being. And if you go down, you'll see that there are some turnkey virtual schools. I am not a big virtual or online person. I do like to enhance my children's learning through online instruction or videos or whatever, but I really do like them to just have the touch and feel of books. Maybe that's because I'm a kinesthetic learner, so who knows? We always project what we like, I think. Then there are some subject-based programs. I put a bunch of resources in there that you can go to. If you're looking for boxed curriculum, which is an all-in-one, you can pick and choose for some of these, but you can also order entire packages. And if you go down, Khadija, you'll see that you can take a la carte classes. So maybe you're just looking for a class on marine biology, and so you're going to open OutSchool and see if you can find an 8-week course on that. Or you're really interested in pre-calculus and you just want something there. Or perhaps your little one is looking to learn a foreign language. You might go on to Middlebury Language School and have some synchronous learning there, one-on-one instruction. And if you continue down, there's some more resources there for enrichment, make your own, and some early childhood programs, which I do not necessarily recommend all of them. I know it's, you have to think about what's age appropriate and the age of your child. I mean, Starfall can be great, but you have to use it in limited doses, or ABC Mouse or whatever, because they're still young. And so developmentally, you shouldn't have that much time in front of the screen. Put in Arabic and Islamic instruction. And then there are a whole bunch of support groups that I put there. For learning benchmarks by grade, I actually put a bunch of different resources for learning benchmarks. My recommendation for you is that you choose one guide and then stick with that throughout. These benchmarks will take you, like the scholastic ones will take you from pre-K all the way through high school learning. What does your child need to learn in what grade? And then I put some parenting books in there. I haven't gotten around to putting all my homeschool book choices. As you can see, this is very expansive, but this is my favorite thing to read and learn about. So children and families and family psychology. So just a bunch of resources in there.
I just want to reassure everyone, these resources will be shared. We actually just got to finalizing some of these documents, and so that's why they hadn't been shared earlier, but inshallah, we're really hoping with the next 24 hours to get you guys the link, and then you'll be able to look at the folder. We have Kother's document, and then we also have another one that has some resources just for parents on parenting resources podcast. And then we have one more, which is about like 5 pages long as well, but hopefully it won't be too overwhelming, but it also talks about some more research places to get you started. So again, like Amanda and Kother mentioned, there are a lot of places you can look, and so you just want to find what's best for you.
Another quick note, Khadija. All parents should know that our library system, I know that we have a lot of maybe countries that are in this particular conference, but check your library system wherever you are in the world, right? Here in the States, there are, especially in the Nova area, right, in Northern Virginia and Maryland and DC, there are so many free resources through the library. You would be surprised what you'll find there. I mean, you can find language courses, foreign language courses like Mango. You can find the Great Courses, which is a paid subscription that the library offers for free through our county and Loudoun County. I mean, each county is going to be different. I'm sure overseas there might be some library options as well, but use those free resources and check them out. See what your libraries offer. And what's even cooler is that some of them have reciprocal agreements. So like you can get it in Loudoun County, but you can also get it in Fairfax County. You can also get it over in Ohio if you pay a $20 membership fee. I mean, the amazing amount of resources that we have at our fingertips that are free is astounding if people only knew that they were there.
And if you're doing, unit studies, a library is, I know, a teacher's best friend. You can use your librarian. That's what their job is. If you tell them, hey, little Ahmed is learning about dinosaurs, can you pull all of your, children's books on dinosaurs for me and have them ready? You just go and pick them up. You can pick up an entire crate of library books and enhance your child's learning. It's not just programs, it's also what the librarian can pull together
right. No,
for you.
I mean, you don't even have to talk to them anymore. You just go online, click, 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 click. It's on hold. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, so the reason, I mean, you're right. The homeschooling community, mashallah, has so many resources now, and I think so much support, especially finding a community. Now we're not really finding a physical community, but even finding a virtual community is a great place to start. Once we've found a curriculum or kind of identify, I think, resources that we like, how do parents make sure, well, actually, before I jump to that, a parent had a question that might still relate to what we're talking about before. It was basically like, how do I balance what I need to teach with what my child likes? So if I'm choosing a curriculum that is covering the academic content, my child has interests elsewhere, how do I balance that?
I would say that for every child, I know this is going to sound really old-fashioned, but what you really want to ensure are the 3 R's, okay? Reading, writing, and arithmetic. I know only one of them actually starts with R. But if you want to focus on the reading, writing, and arithmetic, you want to make sure that they're meeting those benchmarks. And those are really important, because if your child can learn from reading, and if they can communicate through writing, and if they can do basic and essential computations and really understand conceptually what is happening in the math in a very concrete, with a very concrete understanding, then everything else, all the other subject-based stuff, they can learn. So, okay, so they're interested in, sea life, or so they really, really want to learn about colonial times. You know, you don't have to necessarily, you can give them avenues to explore what they're interested in and still cover the very essential benchmarks for learning. I think you would be surprised, actually, if you open up some of those links that I posted for learning benchmarks, how simple they are. Benchmarks are different. Learning benchmarks are different than state-generated standards of learning, right? Or learning objectives, okay? Those are gonna have certain science learning objectives, a certain, you know, and it might be content-based, not necessarily skill-based or understanding-based. So you can still cover the scientific skills, for instance, the scientific method, but apply that to different types of subject matter within science. So your child can explore what they want, but they're still applying the skills that they need in those learning benchmarks for science. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. What's so amazing, I think you don't really, or you may not see it unless you're living it, right? Is that I used to follow one by one, the standards, one by one, just for, I think it was a year. And my son was fine with that. That's what he wanted to do. But what I came to find is that even without following the one by one, if you were engaging the kid and, you know, it's just hitting 20 minutes of math a day, doesn't even have to be a long time. You're gonna pass through those standards with flying colors. Half the time you're hitting standards, you don't even know you're hitting standards. So if you want it for the peace of your mind, you know, peace of mind to go one by one, you absolutely can. But you really have to have faith in the process. If you're engaging that child and the child is learning something new every day, which I'm sure they are, you know, just from playing and learning and, you know, just everyday stuff, it's gonna be okay. It's really going to be okay. I've seen fantastic results for people that unschool, quote unquote, and fantastic lives. I mean, mashallah, they're doing great. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues to get to where we want to go. So, you know, you can I understand, you know, wanting to follow all the standards of the states, you know, and following everything to a T. I understand that. But at the same time, just know that there are other ways. It's not only this way.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that you know, when it comes to unit studies and children learning about what they want to learn about, I think that it's important to integrate the learning, right? So if they really, really, really want to learn about, you know, dinosaurs, there's so much dinosaur math that you can do, or they want to learn about reptiles. You can learn not just about the science and anatomy of reptiles. You can do, you know, reptile related math and measure the length of a snake, and, you know, you can do life cycles. You can do, you know, snake folk tales and from different cultures. You can do, I mean, there's so much that you can do to integrate that learning and really do a deep dive, okay? So a lot of what we do in formal education is we spiral our curriculum, which means that we just cover it in a very shallow and basic level, and then we'll do fractions in first grade, and then fractions in second grade, and then fractions in third grade, and we do it a little bit, and we revisit it, and then we hope that at some point along the line it sticks, right? But, you know, if you're in the kitchen and you're cooking and you do fractions because you're measuring out, you know, how many 1/3 cups can we do, if, you know, or how, if we're cutting this recipe in half, how do we do that? What's half of, you know, a full cup, or what's half of a 3/4 cup, things like that. I think that it can be, you know, there are lots of ways to address that learning. There are lots of ways to dive deep in subjects that children are really, really interested in. And there are lots of ways to integrate that learning so that they're covering lots of benchmarks, even in one subject area.
Yeah, subhanAllah, you do the cooking unit and you throw away the 1 cup and you make them use fractions to get to that 1 cup of flour. It's amazing how much that sticks. And that's just one time you covered something. It's not like the spiral approach is great for some kids, but I'll tell you now that I have a kid that's like, I learned this already and I'm done with it. Can we move on? You know, like, I don't need to learn it every year. And they notice, those kids notice. So it's like, you got to work with that and know that some kids really don't need the extra, okay, let's review it again and let's review it again. And one kid actually, right, and was like, you know, they teach us about the flowers every year. And I was like astonished that I never realized that I never crossed my mind as a kid that they taught about flowers and flower parts every year, and they just got deeper with it. We noticed. It's crazy.
And when you think about how much formal instruction actually takes place in a school setting, it really isn't a lot of time. You know, the time that the teacher's standing in front of the classroom really isn't a lot. And then when children are working independently, that's when we're able to touch base and address that child's individual learning. And, you know, that can be hit or miss in a classroom. And so it really doesn't take a lot for them to cover the learning objectives or the benchmarks when it's just at home and you only have a few children.
So you guys have mentioned benchmarks. However, I know that there are other ways to know what your child should learn. Kother, you had mentioned to me a book called Yardsticks, which I got. I know there are other resources as well. So I guess we can encourage parents to kind of broaden their horizons as well. And benchmarks can sometimes feel limiting because sometimes your child may not be ready for certain things, or you're like, wow, this is really simple. Is this what I need to teach? So maybe to kind of expand looking at different resources.
I wanted to say that there is a difference between learning benchmarks and developmental milestones, okay? So developmental milestones are sort of, a measuring stick of where around what your child should be experiencing, where they might be developmentally, the ways that they might be thinking or learning or socializing, even their gross motor skills, like the big body movements or the small body movements. What should they be able to do at around that age? Learning benchmarks are sort of more of someone's artificially generated, list of things that your child should learn at that age. So benchmarks are what they would normally be doing under appropriate development. You can go to the benchmarks a year above or a year below. So socially, you might have a little girl who is a year above in social benchmarks, but might be, a year below on fine motor skills, for instance. Whereas, those are milestones. And then for benchmarks, that's someone saying, okay, they should learn their colors and their ABCs by kindergarten. They should know their, you know what I mean? They should be doing 3-letter words by the end of first grade or something like that.
Yeah, I like to tell this little small story, right? So when I was a preschool teacher, there was a 2-year-old who was phenomenal. She knew all the colors, right? Knew them really quickly. I'm going to tell you that mom had to have spent at least 6 months, so almost a year, to get the 2-year-old, maybe she was 18 months, but to get her to memorize those colors, right? And then you have the 3-year-old, it takes 2 days, right? 1 or 2 days max for certain 3-year-olds. So sometimes I feel like as parents, we are spinning our wheels, right? Trying to teach the child this particular skill, but have us wait 6 months down the line and they get it no problem. It takes so I feel like sometimes we're like drilling and drilling and drilling. Okay, why won't my kid learn multiplication? Why can't they get it? But then in the 1 or even 2 years, they memorized everything. They have everything
so much faster.
Yeah, they know how to get it. So we have to be aware that not everyone is going to learn multiplication in 3rd grade. It might take up to 5th grade sometimes, and that's okay. We're still learning. We're just working on those a little while longer,
Right. You guys are so right. I actually experienced that with my daughter, where I was trying to teach her math skills at like age 5, and she was like, I don't get this. And now at age 7.5, she just like gets math so much. She's so interested and she gets it. So just waiting 2 years made my life easier. I was like, I don't understand math. So
and that happens with reading. It's one thing that every parent can relate to is just potty training, right? Like, when are they ready? Some are ready at 9 months and some aren't ready until they're like 4. So I think it just really depends on knowing your own child. But when you want to be able to assess what your child, like, how do you know that you're covering what your child needs to learn? Benchmarks are a good way to know. Milestones, developmental milestones are a good way. And then when you choose a curriculum, if it's a boxed curriculum, it usually comes with some sort of scope and sequence of learning, some sort of set of skills that has a breakdown of what should be covered in any given year. If you're doing an online curriculum, you're doing online learning, I think like IXL or something has this where it will show you the learning benchmarks. And once your child has gone through the lesson and taken it, it'll say mastered or something. And it'll just have, you know, it'll even show you in some of these online curricula, it'll just show you a chart of the things that they've learned, right? So depending on the format that you choose, there are going to be different ways for you to do that. And you can track their progress through assessment. And I think that that's probably where what a lot of parents think of when they think of measuring what their child has learned. The real question that they might be asking is, how do I assess what my child has learned? So we might go into assessment, I guess, next.
I think that'd be a great next point for us to cover is just how do you know what your child is learning? How do you know what they're learning, how much they learned, if they've actually retained it, and what types of assessments work best for you guys?
You want me to go ahead?
Sure.
I'll start, and then Catherine does a good job of fixing all the holes. Okay,
yeah.
so
we work together.
Okay, so for my kids, I mean, they're okay. So depends. I think we kind of skipped over this. Was like what season you're in, right? So throughout the years, everyone is kind of in a different season. You can't compare where you are, like on Facebook, right? I'm sorry, I'm going to go the social media route. But on Facebook, you'll see moms, like, they got the kids out on field trips and they're having these great pictures. And you're like, man, I don't do nothing with my kids, you know? But that's because you just had a baby, or there's some kind of injury that's going on that you got to be home, or maybe you're just really tired. So, you know, your hormones aren't right. And so there's so many different levels and where everybody's at, right? So we have this comparison issue. But, you know, throughout my journey and throughout the journey with my kids and, you know, how they've been through stuff. I mean, we had 6 kids, right? So there's a period of time where, like, you know, for that month or 2 after the baby, we're kind of just chilling, you know, like things are pretty easy. You know, that's kind of why we homeschooled throughout the whole year, to make up for those times that I feel like we just kind of were just reading and playing Prodigy online and playing math games online and just kind of doing whatever we need to do to survive, you know, sometimes. So assessment happens sometimes on those programs, right? Some of my littles like reading eggs, and so you can kind of see what they're reading and see what's going on. And Prodigy has its own assessment. You kind of play with the settings and stuff, have them work on certain skills. And I did that off on the couch, right? I didn't have to do a lot of hard work in that. Dreambox, some of these online programs, they have the assessment built in. Now, in terms of how they're doing throughout the year, I mean, at the end of the year, we tend to do I like to just test them and get it over with. Some people will have a portfolio and have pictures. I also keep record for my own, for them, I guess when they get older, we take pictures of vacations and we take pictures of where we're going and things like that. And I post it for me and my husband in our own little private Facebook group. And so that we'll have like a running tab of everything that we've done. That's also kind of an informal assessment, like some of the things that we've done, so we can just remind ourselves, oh, you know, this is where they were. I'll take writing samples, workbook pages, if they did workbooks. Some of my kids like workbooks, some of them did not. So we'll kind of take samples of that, put that in there. But bottom line is, at the end of the year, we just take the test and it looks good. There's always some sort of progress, to be honest. Mashallah, they do great, and we just keep it moving. I don't really weigh too heavily on the assessments, but I understand when you're first getting into it, you're really worried. So you want the best assessment and you want, you know, everything all lined up and perfect. I totally get that. But what you'll find as you get through the years is that, I mean, mashallah, they are meant, it's inside of their souls. Allah made them this way to just learn. As long as we're facilitating the type of environment where they have access to books, they have access to nature, they have access to, you know, other people. Mashallah, there's so much to learn, you know? So go ahead, Kathy, you're too.
Absolutely. I love everything. That's also true. I think just having that nurturing environment is key to, alhamdulillah, our children growing and learning. You know, when it comes to assessment in a more formal way, parents often ask, how often should I assess and how should I assess? Okay, so the answers to those questions are that you should assess your child's learning regularly and you should assess in a variety of ways, okay? There are formal ways of assessing and informal ways of assessing. So when you do a formal assessment, most of us think about a child taking a test or a quiz, or usually a test or a quiz. And informal assessments that a lot of people think of are just asking gauging questions or thinking questions, right? In reality, there are a lot of different ways to assess formally and informally. And as your child is going through the learning process, you want to make sure that you've built in what we call formative assessments, which is assessing your child's learning during the learning, okay? So you want to see, how are they really understanding it? Do they have math misconceptions? You know, have they done their Saxon math lesson and learned the regrouping lesson and said, oh mom, look, I've learned this. Okay, well, explain regrouping to me. What have you learned? And oh, well, I know I have to carry a 1 or borrow a 1. Okay, well, automatically right there, just in asking them what they've learned, you've realized that there's mathematic misconception. You're not carrying a 1 or borrowing a 1. You're in fact, you're regrouping a 10 or regrouping 100, right? And so that's an opportunity for you to address maybe a hole in their learning, okay, through formative assessment. Then there's something that you get to at the end, which is a summative assessment. That's the sum of their learning. What have they achieved if they finished an entire unit of learning, or after, at the end? Sometimes summative assessments come at the end of a unit, like did they master, like Amanda said, all the parts of a flower? Or are you doing a summative assessment for all of the benchmarks that they should have met throughout the course of 4th grade, for instance? And again, that can be formal or not. Your summative assessment can be that if it's formal, it might look like a standardized test. But if it's an informal assessment, it might be your child doing a presentation on what I've learned in 4th grade. And they make a whole, one of those cardboard, 3-fold boards, and they have a whole presentation on these are the things that I've learned. Or it could be, like Amanda said, a portfolio of their learning, where it's, they've pulled together, a child has sat down with what they've learned with their parent, and they say, okay, well, this is how I wrote at the beginning, and this is how I wrote in the middle, and this is how I'm writing now. And that can be their summative assessment. It can just be demonstrating their learning through projects or through presentations. What you want to keep in mind is, just as you're accounting for your child's different learning styles through their multiple intelligences when you are choosing curriculum, you also want to address their multiple intelligences when you are assessing them. So if you know that your child is a very strong auditory learner, you want to give them opportunities to actually explain what they've learned, as opposed to doing a written paper pencil test, for instance. If they are kinesthetic, you want them to be able to model what they've learned. And so you have to think about allowing your child to demonstrate their learning through different ways, not just the typical paper pencil method, okay? You also want to think about Bloom's taxonomy, which is, how deep did the learning go? Was it just rote learning? In other words, did they just memorize facts and now they can regurgitate those facts to you, which is most paper pencil tests, versus did they really understand it? Can they apply the learning? Like if they learned the scientific method, can they apply that to an experiment? Can they create something with their learning? Can they use it to evaluate and analyze? These are things that you want to look at the depth of their learning, depending on where they are developmentally. So, when you're doing assessments, ask a lot of guiding questions. Inquire about what they think they know from it. Have your child explain what they think they've understood from their learnings, and then take notes. Take notes on your child as they're learning. Like I said, allow them multiple different ways to demonstrate their learning. Those are all assessments.
Would you both talk a little bit about the concept of grade level, and if a child is at grade level or not at grade level, and how parents should feel about that?
Oh, okay. So real quick, to go back to Kauthar, what she mentioned about what sort of assessment to use with a child, make sure that if you don't know, which is okay, you can ask them, okay, so would you rather, because I have a child that literally would rather take a test and just say, okay, I'll just take the test and I just want to be done with it. Okay, and moving on, and then I have other children that would prefer to tell me about it. And I have other children that would prefer to do a project about it. So, I mean, I know them, but if you're at the stage where you're new and you're not quite sure how your child, ask them, would you like to do a project on this, or do you want to tell me about it? And they'll tell you. I mean, they know themselves, subhanAllah, just intrinsically.
And the same goes for curriculum selections, right? Like you should really be engaging your child, asking them, is this working for you? Is this curriculum working for you? Is this book working for you? I've had times where in the middle of the year, I'll just scrap it all and find something new, and I have them pour over the books with me, or pour over the classes, look at the descriptions with me, or make selections for themselves. And it really helps when children take ownership of their own learning, and you would be surprised at what a young and tender age they can do that sort of thing. I think that it's important for them because it really helps them to take ownership of their own learning. It becomes a part of them, and it's very empowering, and we want to empower our children. I mean, that's even Islamically speaking, we want to empower them to, fulfill their own fitrah, right? And so by making the right choices, it's the same thing with their learning, right? Because learning is part of our fitrah too, right? That's how we lean towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We learn about the dunya, so it brings us closer to Allah azza wa jal. So I think that, that's really important. Like Amanda said, ask.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's a team effort.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm going back to the question.
Going back to grade level, and that was beautiful. I think such a great reminder that we really are here to empower our kids and not necessarily just push them up to the next grade level.
Or pour into them. What is it? The blank. Yeah. Okay, so grade level. Okay, so I'm gonna be real honest with you guys here, right? So everyone thinks, okay, this is the grade that we're working on, and so everyone, we're gonna tell we're in 3rd grade. However, kids don't learn like that, to be honest, right? So we have one child who really excels in science, and he's, maybe in 8th grade, right? But he's really a 7th grade student, or maybe in math, they're not doing well, so he's really in 5th grade, right? Or you have the child that super smart, taking AP economics in 6th grade, right? And that's just their thing. That's their numbers. They're really advanced in that. And I think that we have to keep in mind that that's what we're facilitating. We're showing them who they are. We're giving them the guidance that, okay, I see that you're good at numbers. Here's more. Or I see that you love dinosaurs, as Kauthar mentioned earlier. Here's more. I see that you whatever the case may be, we're adding to it. We're providing the environment for them to dive deep. Right? So just keep in mind when you're looking at grade levels, Simon across the street might be a whiz at math and have, all the multiplication tables memorized in 2nd grade, and your 3rd grader still has not memorized them. There's nothing wrong with that. We have benchmarks, which Kauthar already mentioned, are abstract. They have nothing to do with where your child is at. Your child might not be developmentally ready for multiplication in 3rd grade. They're all at different levels sometimes. And what teachers try to do is pull everyone together. And that's the hard part, I think, differentiating all the learning and making sure that all the students' needs are met. And with our homes and with our children, we have one child, right? For example, I have 6, but you work with one at a time, and where they need work. So it's okay if we spend a couple years on something that needs a little bit more work. Who's judging? Who cares if it takes you 2 years? Like, once you graduate high school, they're gonna go, oh, well, in 3rd grade, it took you 5 years to learn multiplication tables. It's really gonna be okay. You know what I mean? So I think just remembering that the end goal, that mission statement, right? That I know that we've mentioned throughout the conference is, whatever that mission statement is, even as you go through the struggles and the pain of things that are not quite going the way you planned, you remember, okay, it's okay. I'm trying to aim for making a great person, a great human being that loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's okay that today we can't get multiplication. Let's try again in 6 months, or let's put it down for a minute and work on what they love, which is, you know, nature. Let's go do a whole year on nature and focus on that. And I know that makes some people uncomfortable to think about, you know, putting down, especially in those young years, you know, we're talking about K through 3rd grade, where you have so many kids who don't want to write. And they're like, no, I'm not doing it. And I feel like if you are getting them outside and they're working on all their, you know, large motor skills or fine motor skills, they're playing with Play-Doh, eventually they won't mind writing because they'll be strong. You know, maybe in kindergarten they weren't strong enough and so it hurt. You know, there could be so many things going on with a child. Give it time, you know, just relax. And it's okay if Johnny is advanced and your child is not. Eventually, keep working with the child. Don't give up, but don't be afraid to put things down too.
So I want to say that, you know, teachers don't often like, you know, talk about this with parents, but we know it between ourselves oftentimes. When you're looking at any given classroom, what you can usually expect, generally speaking, is that roughly you'll have 20% of learners that are on the sort of lower end, where they're going to need a lot of assistance and they're going to need a lot of accommodations and they're going to need extra work in certain areas. You have 20% of students who can be gifted in any particular subject. I'm talking about any subject area. And they can excel and they're way beyond what you would consider grade level, okay? So below 20% below grade level, 20% above grade level, and you have about 60% in the middle in any given subject area. And in my experience, when you take all subjects together, there are far fewer than 30 or 40% of students that are synchronous in matching up and are on grade level in every single subject area. I almost never see it. You know, most kids are asynchronous and where they line up in terms of grade level learning. You know, you're going to get kids that are higher in, you know, math and lower in reading and maybe higher in writing, but lower in STEM. You know, it really is okay. Most of us aren't synchronous learners, even as adults. I bet if you really think about what you like to learn about or what you're good at, you'll find that it's not going to be even across the board. I think that that's not human and very, I don't know, it's just not realistic. And I think that when you're looking at grade level, I think it's really important to ask yourself why you're asking that question. Is my child on grade level? Because it can be important or it can be not important, okay? It can be important if you are homeschooling, but you want to transition your child into a 9th grade public school. And so you need to know that they've learned all the things that they need to learn so that they can be successful in 9th grade public school. Whereas, you know, if you're not transitioning your child out, those artificial benchmarks really are irrelevant to you completely. But if you want to make sure that they're college ready, then they might need to know, I'm a firm believer in skills, reading, writing, arithmetic. If they can do that, they can do anything. Honestly, they can learn anything and they can express their learning in any possible way. But if they need to know certain things, like they need to have certain classic books read, or they really wanted to go into STEM, and so they might need to brush up on their math. They might need to get to pre-calculus before they go into college. That's okay. You know, I took my kids as far as geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry. And I told them, okay, when you take your placement exam, you have to place into pre-calculus. If you go into developmental math, you've got to pay for your credits yourself. And so, you know, that up to grade level for me was important because I knew that my kids were going into a bachelor's of science. And so, you know, you have to really understand what the purpose of that question is. Yeah.
And to add to that, it's amazing what I think there was a study done, and I can't quote it now, but it's amazing what you can learn at any age when you really want to learn it, right? So the kid doesn't see any, let's say, for example, the kid doesn't see, okay, writing, I hate writing. There's no, why do we need to write? We use computers, we use typing, all of this, until they're up in a group of people and they have to write a note or write a message. And to be honest, they face that embarrassment, right? Of, oh, they can't read my writing. All of a sudden, it becomes real important for that child. And it hurts, right? Because you're trying, as a homeschooling parent or any parent, you're trying to show them, okay, this is why it's important. And they're just not feeling it. And so one day, the outside world shows them, Well, yeah, it's important if you want the person to read your writing, you know? So all of a sudden, they learn it real quick. And all of a sudden, it's important to them. When the kid sees how important to them, although it hurts us, right? When we feel like we haven't done our job to show them the importance, or made them do it, or had that, you know, you're fighting them sometimes to write, some kids. And it took, you know, outside to tell them, you know, and they're embarrassed. So all of a sudden it becomes important, and all of a sudden their handwriting is beautiful. You'll be amazed when they are intrinsically motivated to do what it is that they need to do or they want to do. They learn so much. And I think that's with any human beings, really.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies. So for the next few questions, just for the sake of time, I'll ask one of you to kind of take the lead, and whoever wants to jump in, and then if the other person wants to add to it, otherwise we'll try to keep moving just so that we can answer some of these questions. The big one that has come up a lot is, you know, can I teach my child? How am I qualified? You know, a lot of parents did not grow up in the USA, and so they're like, I don't know the education system, or the fact that they might not be native English speakers, or just that they lack the confidence. They don't feel that they have an education degree, or even understand what they were taught in school. And so what would you say to the parent who is just worried that they might not be qualified?
Yeah.
Start, or Amanda, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, the first thing that I tell parents like this is really think about who you're surrounding yourself with, right? So many people have done this before us, right? That are in homeschoolers, that have the kids graduated. You know, I mean, this is not a new thing, homeschooling. Surround yourself with people that are going to uplift you. Unfortunately, for some, families do play a part, and they really make you start doubting yourself and doubting what you're doing with the kids. But I really feel like if you surround yourself, and if that even means immersing yourself in the homeschooling world online and learning from people. I've seen so many that knew absolutely nothing about homeschooling, or English was not their first language, for example. And I feel like they're doing more. And that desire or that need to want to do the best for your children, which most of us have, right? That's why we're all here. It kind of just, I don't know, just surround yourself with those in the know. Okay, I certainly don't know everything, you know, but I can put myself amongst people that know some stuff, and I can learn from them, you know, and you're able to do that anywhere. Like, you know, if it's social media, if it's blogs, I mean, there are amazing Muslim blogs that I've seen that where, man, mashallah, I mean, just keep reading. That's what, you know, aqra, you know, read, keep reading, you know, it's all out there. So don't doubt your love for your child, because everyone wants the best for their kid, right? So yeah.
Do you want to add anything before we move on?
I do, really quickly. You know, the first thing I want to say is trust yourself. Parenting is teaching. You are your child's first teacher. And this amana has been placed in your hands, and so trust yourself. You know, you've been teaching them all along. This is just an extension of what you've already been doing, right? It's, you know, you've already been providing the tarbiyah, the modeling and the instruction for your child. The next thing that I want to say is, don't think of homeschooling necessarily as a teacher standing in the front of the classroom and teaching a child, like the lecture style, or, you know, teaching for the masses, for instance. You can think of yourself more as a facilitator or coach. You don't have to be an expert in the content knowledge. If you don't know it, find someone who can teach your child. Find a video, find an expert. You know, I don't know how to do woodworking, but my neighbor across the street does. And so if I want my child to learn that, I can simply find an expert that can teach that to my child. The other thing I want to say is, you know, not using your resources doesn't just mean outsourcing the instruction or facilitating ways for your child to find support when you don't know something or aren't an expert in that subject matter. It also means learning more yourself. You know, if you want to learn how to bake bread, you always watch a YouTube video or a bunch of them. You look up tons of recipes, you look up ways to do it. It's the same thing for your child. Look up, start doing some reading. Do reading on child development. Do reading on parenting skills. You might not be a professional educator, but you can do some reading on best practices in instruction. There's an art and science to teaching, and those are things that you can actually learn and teach yourself. If you're passionate about it, you'll learn how to do it well. just facilitate, be a facilitator. You don't have to be the teacher or the expert in the content knowledge.
Thank you, ladies.
Mm-hmm.
How about any comments about the Christian curriculums that are out there, just generally, not specifically? Do you feel that we should, as Muslims, avoid Christian curriculums or faith-based curriculums? What are your thoughts on that?
Wow. Okay, well, you're going to have an opinion, right, from anyone. Wow. So I think personally, okay, I'm going to make a stand and say that there are many good resources out there of all types of faiths, right? I think that if you eliminate one group because of their belief, you might be missing out on some stuff, on some quality material, especially because a lot of the monotheistic faiths share some very similar goals in life, in like creating good people and trying to be generous and that type of thing. I think that if you can weed through things and you're able to avoid shirk and things that we're not supposed to be teaching our kids, obviously, then use what works. I see no problem with navigating anything that's going to help you get to your end goal and the mission statement of raising great Muslim kids that have influence on their community and do great things for their communities, right? So I'll take whatever curriculum I need to take. I'm not going to my kid and saying, I'm using the Christian curriculum and this, we skip all that extra stuff. We don't need to talk about that. In fact, there are groups created, Khadija has created a beautiful one where you kind of navigate that and you work around it and make it more Islamic. Now, would we love Islamic curriculums and things like that? We're working on it. I'm sure that we'll come up with something that's up to par with what a lot of our beliefs are. But in the meantime, we got to teach our kids. And so, that's the main goal.
I agree with Amanda in the sense that a lot of the morals for the Abrahamic faiths do line up, but the Aqidah doesn't.
No,
and so for me, I think that there are enough resources out there, non-Christian or secular resources out there, that I, for myself, would avoid it. I just, we're already asking our children to swim upstream in a society that isn't Muslim, and it's really hard, especially where the beliefs are concerned. And I think that, like Amanda said, if you can cut it out or just avoid it or find an alternative, there's just so much rich content. There are so many resources out there that there really isn't a need if you don't.
Yeah, I think that the need part falls in when people don't know where. Okay, so for example, you need material and you need books that are more aligned to your faith, right? So I feel like the Christian community has kind of banded together. I did find an excellent resource that I posted in the comments, but it's just now becoming a thing. I think so. There are more resources for books and things like that are more aligned to our faith. But at the same time, I just feel like, yeah, I mean,
it's definitely a decision that
it's an opinion question.
It's an opinion question, exactly. So somebody asked, and I thought I'd throw it out there, but so another question we had was about Kother or Amanda, if you have any recommendations for learning to read and write for dyslexics, or is there any specific things that you could just mention quickly?
I mean, there's curriculum geared towards dyslexia. I do have a child that I work with that has dyscalculia. So there are, math programs that we work with her in particular to help her, and it works great. I think if you're looking for just reading and writing, I'd have to navigate that unless Kauthar knows right off the top of her head.
Off the top of my head, I mean, there are a bunch of programs that are out there. I don't have the names of them off the top of my head. I do have a very near and dear friend of mine who actually, a Muslim woman who lives in Herndon, who does this as her business, and she is certified in one of the methods, at least I know, if not more than one, and she would be a specialist in this. I think that I can definitely find the names of those resources. I know tutors that are certified in them. This Muslim woman happens to be one of them. And there are a bunch of other methods that you can learn to help with dyslexia and dysgraphia, but I don't have them off the top of my head.
CoTheR's website is listed in the resource document. So if you want to ask follow-up questions about curriculum, you can do that by accessing our website, which is, remind me, it's Summit Educational Services. Is that right, CoTheR?
That's correct. And I mean, there are a bunch of, I could, go over a bunch of accommodations and modifications that you could make for kids with dyslexia and dysgraphia, for reading, for writing, for math, for general instruction, but that would be a long answer. And I don't know that that's exactly what you're looking for. You might just be looking for some, programs that are out there. And I have a couple. There are 2 or 3 that I really like, but I just can't remember their names off the top of my head. Sorry.
How do you approach Islamic education, Quran education? Do you prefer textbook or live tutor? What do you guys recommend or has worked for you?
You want to go ahead?
You
want to start us off, CoTheR? Or Amanda, sorry.
Oh, yeah, we'll both do it, I'm sure. So from my perspective, right, so it's really a concern of mine. It's the Islamic and Arabic portion due to my not speaking Arabic and also, converting later. I really had to, I knew that I wouldn't be able to, I feel like, give it its right. So a lot of different things I've done, kind of eclectic again, was, using the masjid at the time when things were more open. We've used tutors through like Studio Arabia. Currently, because of the situation, I have my sister-in-law who now works with the kids, and she's an Islamic teacher. So not everybody has that. But I will say about the masjids in our area, although it's very difficult, I feel, for some kids to sit for 3 hours, and go over it and over and over it. I think for my kids, it was okay. They could do it because they didn't sit in school all week. So they were fine with sitting for 3 hours and eating some pizza and coming home, right? But mashallah, the tajweed is like perfect. So I feel like if that works for your kids and your kids are able to sit, which is not a lot of kids can do that, using a masjid and doing that, it's great. But I really encourage parents to really reflect on whether or not what they're using is engaging for the child. If you send your kid in kindergarten or a young age where they're sitting and memorizing, that's really all they're doing is sitting and memorizing. So you have to keep that in mind. Again, with that mission statement, what is the goal? If it's to memorize Quran and not really have much understanding of it, but have it memorized, then that you're on par with that. But you have to really reflect on what you want for your Islamic education. There's a lot of workbooks and things out there. CoTheR and I were discussing earlier that there's not really something that we feel like, okay, this is it. This is the best, Islamic curriculum out there. It's really a daily in and out life. How are you treating your neighbors? How are you, giving charity? Are we talking about people in front of other people? Are we, trashing our neighbors next door? Are we using bad language? All of these types of things that are kind of part of Islam. I mean, these are just a few examples. Of course, it's not an exhaustive list, but you get the idea. It's kind of like Islam is a life. It's a living. It's not just in books and curriculum. So don't forget that part of it. And remember, what is your mission statement? What is that? What is the whole goal of you bringing the kids home? Or what is your goal? Even if you're not bringing the kids home, you're doing distance learning. What do you hope to gain for your children? What is the end goal?
Thank you, Amanda. CoTheR, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to say, there are a ton of programs out there that I'm sure that some of you are already aware of. If you want to do individual Quran tutoring, there are tutors online through Luma Tutor or StudioArabia.com. There is, curriculum and content that you can order through Noor Art or Iqra International Education Foundation. If you are if you have young children and you're doing early childhood, lots and lots of stories. Oh my gosh, alhamdulillah, mashallah, so many books are being published, children's books. And don't just think about ones that are, Quran stories. Think about ones that just feature Muslim children, doing moral things. There are so many really cute ones out. There's one called Najma, and she's really interested in outer space. Ilyas and Duck Search for Allah. My Two Special Angels, The Tiny Droplet, which is about the water cycle. So, try to think of incorporating lots of literature and stories. As they get older, if you can't find those live classes, like Amanda said, Seeker's Guidance and Seeker's Hub has a lot of classes. Sohaib Webb has classes through his organization Swiss, and actually where I am studying Sharia now and have been for the last 4 years, through Ribat, which is Ansa Tamara Gray's Learning Institute for Women. If you have daughters that are age 17 and above, they can start taking classes through Ribat, and I think that Ribat is also going to begin teaching adolescent girls. So it's all women, all of the teachers are women, and all of the students are women or young ladies as well. So I think one thing to consider isn't just providing your child with the resources, but also to consider the tarbiyah. The tarbiyah is very important. And it's like Amanda said, that's how you live and interpret those not just the rules and the adab, but which are the manners, but also the ibadat in your own life. When it comes to Islamic nurturing for your child and Islamic learning, they're going to do as you do, not as you say. And as they become adolescents, that's going to be even more pronounced. You have to be a living example for your children as they become adolescents for what it means to really cultivate and nurture a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you can't show that to your child through your own actions, it's going to be very hard for them to achieve that for themselves. Because really, confronting living Islam means really a jihad of the nafs, and we have to show them that we're on that path with them. So at every age, it's about setting that example.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies. So I think the final question we'll take is just about that tug of war, that kind of balance that you're trying to have between your child and the curriculum. And a few questions that we had is like, well, what if my child can't sit through something? What if my child doesn't like this? How do we kind of navigate that as parents? I know you guys have talked about this, but I think it'd be great to just revisit it once more.
I think that there are a couple of things. The first thing is, don't be afraid to change. Okay, if it really truly isn't working out, if it's not like your child just trying to flake out or get out of work or whatever, if it really isn't a good fit for your child, it's okay. It's okay to throw it out and to start with something different, or to evaluate other options, learning options. Now, if you're butting heads over completion of work, you're going to have to think about the intrinsic motivators, setting an example for intrinsic motivators. One of those is living by example. I can tell you that for as long as my kids have known me, I've been in some sort of school. Either I've been getting my master's degree, or I've been studying, for my Islamic studies classes recently, a lot of my own independent study. Teaching them that when they are learning, it becomes something that no one can take away from them, that it helps them to lean towards the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by really understanding His creation better, and that it's something that uplifts them and enlightens them. Make it a part of their pride in becoming who they are. If that doesn't work, and usually you got to do all these things together, you've got to do the modeling, you've got to help have those conversations about the intrinsic value of learning and education, and then there are sticks and carrots. Good old-fashioned positive negative reinforcement, right? It's just human psychology and human learning 101. Sticks and carrots. You know what? This is what you have to do. Learning is an important part of our household, and this is the time for learning at home, and these are the objectives that you have to get through. When you finish A, B, and C, then you can go do X, Y, and Z. If you don't finish them, you're gonna sit there until time, or these are the sticks, right? Like, these are the things that you're gonna lose, and you have to really think about very carefully and hard about where they are developmentally, and when to gauge your child. When do you need to, and when do you need to sort of push a little bit harder? So it's all of that.
Yeah, I think too, like, if the kid has helped you pick the curriculum, you'll have a lot less resistance. Like, we discuss it, especially as they get older, the little teenager, right? He helps me choose it. So it's like, okay, well, you chose this, so let's go ahead and get it finished up, and then you can move on to the next thing. So and then I'll tell him later that, is it working for you? Is it not working for you? We can switch it up if you want. And, he'll be like, no, it's good. It's good. I just wanted to go do whatever, something else. So, I think if they are your teammate and you're working towards and they understand that you're working towards helping them, figure out who they are and what they want to do, then it's a lot less resistance. I think the resistance is when there's a lot of forcing going on and you sit down and do it, and it's a little give and take. And I think sometimes, like you said, it's sticks and carrots, and sometimes it's more intensive.
And when they're little, get jazzed up about the learning. Get excited, be there with them. A lot of parents tend to do this thing where it's like, okay, go downstairs and play. But they do that with their learning, where it's like, go sit down with your work and learn, all right? But their parents aren't invested, they're not involved, they're not excited, they're not there with them with the learning. Like, this is so cool, this is so amazing. Oh my gosh, subhanAllah, look at these flower parts. Oh my gosh, let's go outside. Let's how about we pick honeysuckle and we eat it, and then we take it apart and we look at all the different parts of it, and just get jazzed up, get excited. If you help them to love learning, if you're really in there with them and you're super excited and you're there with the kids, if you've done your job when they're little and you've gotten them super interested in love with learning, by the time they get to adolescence and all the hormones are going crazy and they're already ornery, then you know what? You've at least helped them to build that intrinsic value. Don't wait to have the conversations until they're older. Get excited with them when they're little. Just really get into it and rediscover your own childlike wonder in the world. Everything from numbers to planets to, it's all exciting. It's all beautiful. It's all super fun.
And if you don't feel that way, fake it till you make it.
Absolutely. Teachers fake it all the time.
I was just going to say, I think it's a smile and just like, honestly, faking it for my child, just that put so much magic into it. We'll be like doing verbs versus nouns, and we're just like, oh, wow. And she's like, oh, okay, this is exciting. And the buy-in is there. So I feel like when they're younger, it's easier. And if you already have that relationship, then that's a great starting point, inshallah. When other things happen, they're teens. I don't have teenagers yet, so I'm a little nervous, but
they're like, why are you acting like that?
I still act like that, and I don't care. I embarrass them.
I want to thank you, ladies, so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us tonight. This has really been very helpful, and inshallah, we are looking to share those resources very soon with everyone. I know I've been getting a lot of emails and messages about that. I also just wanted to remind everyone that we have 2 more sessions. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about balanced homeschool, and that is where we'll be all the questions we're getting about how do I deal with multiple kids, and how do I work, and how do I create space in my home for everyone to have space. Sister Amanda will be back with us, and also Brother Altaf, inshallah. And then we're really lucky to have Sister Kothar and Sister Mona back with us on Sunday to talk about teens, which we just got a little preview of right now. So, Jazakallah khair, thank you so much, and inshallah we look forward to seeing everyone back. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.